What an immigration mess we have here in South Texas. And I know got a lot of policymakers and local politicians, D.C. politicians talking about it. Something needs to be done. Joining us on 710 KURV, Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Welcome back to the show, Patriot. It's good to talk to you, sir. On this $3.7 billion the president wants for immigration and border response. It's not security stuff. It's border response to take care of these kids and get lawyers and get judges and stuff like that. Do you think D.C. lawmakers are going to move quickly to approve this before I believe it's the August recess?
Well, good morning, Sergio. It's good to be back with you. No, I don't think that the president's budget request is going to go through because the budget request is not designed to actually solve the humanitarian crisis that is happening. The president's asked for $3.7 billion, but virtually none of it goes to border security. Out of the entire package, less than 5% of it goes to boots on the ground. And every law enforcement officer, elected official, senior Border Patrol agents with whom I've spoken about how you secure the border, boots on the ground consistently are the number one most effective way to do so. And the president's proposal is simply a proposal to deal with the symptoms without dealing with the underlying cause of this crisis, which is the Obama administration's lawlessness, their refusal to enforce our federal immigration laws.
Are you familiar with a few more of the details of this proposal? Has anything been written up? For example, is there any call for reimbursement of local or state expenses? Somebody shouldering the expense of providing medicine and care to all these kids. I know that they're in the custody of HHS, but with all the medical situations that they're having to deal with and counseling and everything else, somebody must be picking up the cost at the local level and might require reimbursement. What do you know as far as the specifics, the language of this bill? Is it even a bill right now?
Sergio, we do have some specifics in terms of what the president is talking about. 1.8 billion of it would go to HHS, Health and Human Services. This is a social services bill. This is not a border enforcement bill. And unfortunately, it does not include a significant component for reimbursing state and local authorities. The state of Texas and local authorities are expending significant resources trying to do the job that the federal government is supposed to be doing. And indeed, just a couple of weeks ago, I supported Texas Attorney General Greg Abbott, who was seeking reimbursement from the federal government. I sent a letter in support. I think it makes sense. I think the federal government should do its job, should honor the constitutional obligations of the president to secure the borders and to protect our nation. But the federal government isn't doing its job, and the states and local governments are trying to step in, are trying to do what they can, and I think it does have, interestingly enough, $295 million to reimburse Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador for their costs, but it doesn't cover the cost of state and local governments here in the
kind
United
of doesn't
States.
make sense. I think we're spending more than $300 million in flights to sending some of these folks down there right now. Hey, by the way, Congressman Cuellar from our region has been making a lot of noise of late of a loophole in the 2008 law. Is there any talk of maybe latching on to this potential legislation fixed to that, so that once these children are caught by our federal agents, that they be returned to Central America, just like the Mexican kids are returned immediately to those countries?
Yeah. I think there is a good possibility of that moving forward. I think Congressman Cuellar is exactly right. And there was a change in federal law a few years ago which slows down sending children to be reunited with their families back home, so that immediately adjacent countries such as Mexico and Canada, we can do so immediately, but yet more distant countries, it gets slowed down in a bureaucratic process. And I think Congressman Cuellar is exactly right that we should change the law so that we can have the tools to deal with this response.
10-4.
I can tell you as well, he took and is taking quite a bit of grief from the White House for having the courage to speak out and urge that we do the right thing, even though President Obama apparently has very little interest in doing so.
Joining us on 710 KURV Texas, Senator Ted Cruz.
Senator Tim Sullivan here. If I recall, President Obama has indicated his support for changing policy, for changing that 2008 law that would allow us to treat Central American kids and families as we do Mexicans. So I wouldn't be surprised if that does go through without a whole lot of conflict. But let me ask you this. In this particular case, where kids are turning themselves in to Border Patrol agents, how does more border security in this case help? Even our Border Patrol sector chief agrees that this particular case, again, is not an enforcement issue. Do you disagree with him?
Well, there are two things driving what is happening here. If you look at the numbers, in 2011, which was just 3 years ago, there were roughly 6,000 unaccompanied children who were caught trying to illegally enter the country. Then in 2012, President Obama, just a few months before the election, illegally granted amnesty to some 800,000 people who were here illegally, who had entered the country as children. The direct consequence of that, and the predicted and foreseeable consequence of that, is that the number of unaccompanied children began to skyrocket. So this year, it is estimated that there will be 90,000 unaccompanied children.
Okay, but back to my question, please, Senator. Back to my question. You're not addressing the question. How does more border security in this case address what is going on now when our Border Patrol sector chief agrees that it would not?
Tim, I'm trying to answer the question, if you will allow me.
You were going off on a different tangent, but
let him finish.
Tim, I'm answering what is causing the problem. You asked, how do we solve the problem? There are two causes.
No, I didn't ask that. I asked, how does more border security solve this problem?
Because that's the second cause. But Tim, I'm happy to answer your question or not. Would you like me to answer your question? Go for it. Okay, thank you. 3 years ago, there were 6,000 kids coming. This year, there are 90,000 kids estimated to come. Next year, it's estimated to be 145,000. The principal cause for the number of unaccompanied children coming here illegally skyrocketing from 6,000 3 years ago to 90,000 this year at 145,000 next year is President Obama's lawlessness, the promise of amnesty. The secondary cause is that the smugglers are able to bring the children in. They are able to cross the border, and so increasing border security so that we can actually secure the border and keep the coyotes out is a secondary cause. We need to do both.
Texas Senator Ted Cruz joining us on 710 KURV. Before we let you go, Senator, $1.8 billion for Health and Human Services. And on this final note, HHS, sir, has been, I'm trying to be polite here in my language, tyrannical, obstructionist, uncooperative, unaccountable. They do not let media access whatsoever. We have so many questions about these thousands of kids that they're processing on a daily basis. Can you do anything to break that hold that they have at HHS? Let us into Lackland Air Force Base and start asking the questions about health care, psychological evaluation and care for these kids, the daily routines, everything that we need to know about these kids because we're responsible for them. We have no access to them whatsoever because HHS has clamped down.
Sergio, you're exactly right, and it is unacceptable that the media is being shut out. Unfortunately, the administration is treating this as all politics. Yesterday and today, President Obama was in Texas, but he was simply attending Democratic fundraisers, and he had no time to come down to the border. He had no time to visit the children who are suffering because of this policy. Just a few weeks ago, I was at Lackland Air Force Base and was visiting with senior officials there. And, you talked about the trauma that is occurring. I mean, this is heartbreaking what is happening to these children because these are kids who are being handed over, as you know well, not to well-meaning social workers, but to violent, vicious, global criminal cartels. A senior official at Lackland described to me how these cartels are, in some instances, after they have been given the children, after they're bringing them towards the United States, they've been holding them hostage and extracting ransom from the family.
Yeah, well, for some of them, yeah, which is an extension of what they normally do. Do your best, Senator, please, on behalf of these kids and America, period. I mean, this is supposed to be America. We're supposed to have open government, transparent government. We need to break that HHS stronghold and get into Lackland and see these kids and start asking questions of these HHS representatives, state officials, anyone who they've threatened not to talk. We need access to them. Senator, thank you much for your time. That's Texas Senator Ted Cruz on 710 KURV.